This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello and welcome to Global Business, coming to you live from Nairobi. I am Peninah Karibe. As always, we begin with a look at the markets. The JSE faced mixed and somewhat muted Asian markets today, with investors eyeing the threat posed by COVID-19 and waiting for further clues about the future of U.S. monetary policy. The timing of the U.S. Federal Reserve's tapering of its monetary stimulus remains a key theme on markets, with consumer inflation from that country meeting expectations this week, though producer inflation numbers came in higher than expected, showing the continued effect of supply chain disruptions. The Delta variant of the coronavirus is also posing a threat to the global economic recovery. Coming up on the show tonight, manufacturing output in South Africa stalls again after a strong bounce back earlier this year. Nigeria approves a $1.5 billion for the rehabilitation of two refineries. And the UK is facing a critical shortage of truck drivers, with the scarcity hitting retailers and supermarket chains. We kick off the program tonight in South Africa, where manufacturing output came in lower than expected in June, with the industry now expected to weigh down GDP in the second quarter. According to data from Statistics South Africa, output rose 12.5% year-on-year in June, and that's below expectations for an increase of 14.7%, as CGTN Sumitra Naidu reports.
According to Stats South Africa, seasonally adjusted manufacturing production fell 0.7% year-on-year in June. It follows a 2% contraction in May and a 1.4% drop in April.
I think for those of us who are close to the industry, we're seeing that as more or less like a stabilization in terms of the production patterns. The context is in the sense that last year was not a normal year in terms of the heavy lockdown which transpired. If you look back in the figures, for instance, you will see that from the month of March to April this year, if you compare year-on-year to last year.
The data showed improvements in metals, engineering products and furniture. However, there were declines in chemical production.
In June, overall output was down by 0.7%, but we saw, for instance, output in basic steel and also the motor vehicle sector expanding for the year as a whole, i.e. on a 12-month basis. Those two sectors also did perform quite reasonably, showing strong growth in double digits.
Experts are concerned, though, that these lower figures came in before the social unrest unfolded in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal last month, which suggests the industry is still facing challenges around electricity supply and load shedding. A third wave of COVID also slowed activity.
What is more clear is that the challenges in the economy from the point of view of energy supply still exist, even though we're seeing improvement in terms of the production patterns. The issue of imports into the economy still exists currently. The challenges the industry is facing from the logistical cost point of view, it's also something that is still existing in the economy.
July production is also likely to be impacted, but economists believe there will be a strong bounce back towards year-end.
I expect manufacturing activity to gain momentum towards the end of the year. In June, we're talking about the effect of the unrest which disrupted the supply chains, from the ports up to the major routes, i.e. the N3 bringing goods inland, and also destruction of some warehouses.
South Africa is still on COVID alert level 3, which is keeping production down to 80%. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
MTN, the largest mobile operator in Africa by subscribers, says its service revenue increased by about 20% in the first 6 months to 30th June. This was led by growth of 9% at MTN South Africa, 24% at MTN Nigeria, and 26% at MTN Ghana. The group also benefited from double-digit overall top-line growth from the regions, as CGTN's Angela Coppola takes a look.
In constant currency terms, revenue increased by 20% to almost 82 billion rand, and earnings before interest, tax, depreciation and amortization before once-off items increased by 24% to nearly 39 billion rand.
Strong underlying performance across all markets, data revenue growth very, very solid. We're seeing double-digit Nigeria, Ghana, South Africa, pleasing results above its market guidance and really doing well across all business units. The enterprise market doing extremely well at 17.5%, which has really been good growth, a healthy trajectory as in 7 consecutive quarters.
Group liquidity has also been bolstered with positive developments in Nigeria, but it remains concerned.
We've been successful so far in the second quarter, being able to upstream cash from Nigeria successfully. So being able to get access to hard liquidity is probably another concern because it is still an uncertainty in terms of how far this can go.
The operator is upbeat about the second half. It's also looking at its debt levels.
Liquidity is of utmost importance to us, and we continue to make sure that we deliver our balance sheet faster. Holdco leverage, a great improvement from 2.2 times in December to now 1.4 times, and long may it last. We hope to see that coming through. We've been able to pay down our US dollar debt to reduce our mix of non-rent to rent dollar. So that's a key focus for us as well.
Management are concerned about the well-being of their people as they operate in many countries across the continent, and the virus is spreading at different speeds, sometimes affecting operations. The network operator has produced some good results, and hopefully it will carry on in the second half of the year, provided that there aren't any hard lockdowns in the territories in which it operates. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
In Kenya, demand for medical-grade oxygen has risen sharply due to a surge in COVID-19 infections. By the 11th of this month, the country had over 1,800 patients admitted to various health facilities, 7% of whom were on ventilatory support. For patients like these, getting a steady supply of oxygen is a challenge, given that there aren't many producers of the gas in the country. One company, Hewa Tele, is helping to solve that problem, as CGTN's Wanja Mungai now reports.
Kenyan Walter Otieno is working hard to hit a target. He's an employee at Hewa Tele, an oxygen production farm in Nairobi, Kenya's capital. The company has been trying to meet the rising demand for oxygen from its client, mainly hospitals. For the farm, the coronavirus pandemic has meant more work as orders increase daily. Hewa Tele is now aiming at doubling production from 410 tons to 880 tons to meet the demand.
We use our manifold system, which takes 10 cylinders at a time. So that is called a batch. Every batch, we have to fix 10 cylinders of different sizes. When it's 8.5, the bigger one, the smaller one, all of them must be 10 at a time.
Kenya is currently experiencing a fourth wave of the coronavirus pandemic, driven by the highly contagious Delta variant. Hewa Tele is currently supplying 200 hospitals across the country. According to Otieno, that calls for proper hygiene during production.
The first few things which we check are ensure the cylinders are clean. The cylinders which are dirty, we send them outside to the cylinder bay where we wash them. And also we do disinfection.
Hewa Tele is a Swahili word for lot of air. And in keeping with the company's name, the farm works towards increasing capacity, enhancing availability and affordability. The management has also decentralized the manufacturing process.
We do production close to where oxygen is needed. That allows us to lower the costs of transportation. And then we have a simplified milkman distribution model where we bring oxygen to a network of hospitals around the primary facility where the production is done to bridge that oxygen gap.
Average, our price is about 30% below the average market prices. So for government hospitals, our prices are pretty reasonable, between $19 and $25 per cylinder of 8.5 cubic. As compared to the average market price of about $35 to $40 for a similar size. The reason why we have kept it low is because our mission, our organization mission, enables us to do that. We would like to ensure that there is more reliable quality oxygen available, but then at the same time affordable.
Hewatele is among the few liquid oxygen producers in the East African country. It hopes to pump in $3.5 million by end of the year and another $1.5 million in 2022. This is to increase its production capacity. The investment will hopefully help meet the ever-increasing demand for oxygen during this pandemic. Wanjamungai, CGTN.
Still in Kenya, and the Ministry of Environment and Forestry has announced the launch of a new campaign geared at tackling environmental challenges in the capital, Nairobi. The campaign seeks to promote sustainable consumption among members of the public to reduce waste generation. It also aims to promote recycling at homes. Nairobi has witnessed ballooning of electronic waste owing to the rise of mobile phone penetration and a burgeoning middle class. Globally, the UN estimates that electronic waste reached 42 million tons in 2014. Another data by the Global E-Waste Monitor report found that a record 54 million metric tons of electronic waste was generated globally in 2019, marking a 21% jump in just 5 years. Global e-waste is now expected to reach 74 metric tons by 2030, making e-waste the world's fastest growing domestic waste stream. In some corporate headlines, British American Tobacco is seeking new export markets to compensate for lower consumption of cigarettes in Kenya. The firm is targeting Djibouti, Madagascar and South Sudan with cigarettes, cat-rag tobacco and tobacco-free oral nicotine pouches lips. Sales from the Kenyan market dropped 13.8% to about $106 million last year on reduced consumption cigarettes in the wake of regulatory curbs and rising prices following additional taxes. Airbnb shares slid 2.8% in pre-market trading on Friday after the company reported its second quarter earnings. The company's revenue exceeded estimates, nearly quadrupling to $1.3 billion as domestic travel rebounded from its pandemic lows. Airbnb also narrowed its loss to $68 million or 11 cents a share. It now expects the third quarter to deliver its strongest quarterly revenue on record, despite warning about the COVID-19 Delta variant impact. German sportswear firm Adidas has agreed to sell its underperforming Reebok business to American brand management company Fintech Brands Group for up to $2.5 billion. The deal is expected to close in the first quarter of 2022. Fintech Brands Group has scooped up bankrupt brands such as Brooks Brothers, Aeropostale and Forever 21 in recent years. It filed to go public last month. And Google employees in the US who opt to work from home permanently may get a pay cut. The technology giant has developed a calculator that lets its employees see what the impact would be on their salary, depending on where they choose to work and whether they work from home or in an office. Google says it has no plans at this time to implement the policy in the UK. And that's a look at your corporate headlines. You're watching Global Business. We're taking a short break, but still to come. Nigeria approves $1.5 billion for the rehabilitation of 2 refineries. And the UK is facing a critical shortage of truck drivers, with the scarcity hitting retailers and supermarket chains.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay. We'll head up now.
But beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected? When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible? And why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Sutra. Hello, Naro.
This is how all stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business. Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and global business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
The Nigerian government has approved about $1.5 billion for the rehabilitation of two of its refineries in Warri and Kaduna. The contract was awarded to Italian oil and gas firms Saipem SPA and Saipem Contracting Limited. Africa's biggest crude producer has also approved another $11 billion for the construction of the Lagos-Calabar standard gauge rail line. With that report, here's CGTN's Deju Badmas from Lagos.
The contract award for the rehabilitation of the two refineries is coming about 4 months after the government approved the sum of $1.5 billion for similar work on the country's largest refinery in the southern city of Port Harcourt. The two refineries have a combined capacity of 210,000 barrels per day. The government says getting them operational would significantly cut down on refined petrol imports. The contract is split in two.
897,678,800 US dollars for Warri refineries and 586,902,256 US dollars for Kaduna refineries. The completion of the rehabilitation is going to be in 3 phases. First phase is within 21 months. Phase 1 will be completed. In 23 months, phase 2 will be completed. And in 33 months, the full rehabilitation will be completed. The Executive Council also approved the acquisition of 20% minority stakes by the NNPC in Dangote Petroleum and Petrochemical Refineries in the sum of $2.76 billion US dollars.
Nigeria has been committing massive funding to rebuilding its railway network. The government is now committing even more funding with the latest approval of $11 billion for the Lagos-Calabar standard gauge rail line, which will link 12 of the country's 36 states.
This particular route is very important because after the Lagos-Kano route, this Lagos-Calabar coastal route actually will link all the coastal cities in the country. And we have 6 years for the completion of this project.
Just a few weeks ago, President Buhari flagged off the $1.2 billion Kaduna-Kano standard gauge rail line, which is part of the Lagos-Kano rail modernization project. The country is also constructing a rail line to its next-door neighbor, Niger, to facilitate export and import to the landlocked country through the Lagos ports. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
The death toll in South Africa's mines rose to 32 in the first half of this year. That's compared with 24 deaths during the same period in 2020, according to the country's mines ministry. The poor safety record of South African mines, which is some of the deepest in the world, is a concern for investors and a primary reason for the lower valuations of their operating companies compared with global peers. CGTN's Angela Coppola reports from Johannesburg.
The mines, some of which are nearly 4 kilometers deep, have seen a regression in safety from record lows recorded in 2019, with the death toll last year up around 18%.
We need to understand that there could be other psychological stresses that are really impacting on the concentration of our employees. We need to understand the impact of change in work schedules, the rearrangement of work and the reorganization of work, how frontline mining teams are being rescheduled to work in particular places, issues of frontline supervision. Those are the issues that we need to understand.
Rockfall incidents, including seismic events, remain a significant challenge for the platinum and gold mines, while transport-related accidents mostly affected the coal and platinum sector.
From January to June this year, 5 transport-related fatalities, which is an improvement from the 8 that we had last year, and the previous year we had 16, which was 2019. So really, it just shows that the investment that we have made on collision avoidance systems, where we are trying to address transport safety, it's sort of paying dividends. We're not where we want to be. We still have a lot to do.
The National Union of Mine Workers believes that the fatality rate can be reduced by a change of approach from management.
When that occurred, top management, from the general manager to the section manager and so on, they are not being blamed. It is only the supervisor who is getting instruction, of course, from the mine manager, from the general manager, from section manager, that they need to make sure that they read target. And then the chief boss will then pressurize the miner underground that a set target by mine captain should be reached. And again, these people, they have a bonus for reaching the targets, and they don't have a bonus for safety.
Miner health and safety is a key consideration for operators in South Africa, and it's important to bring that fatality rate down. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
A new report by Haifa International says that only 23% of African youth engaged in agriculture are using any form of agricultural technology. The report surveyed over 29,000 youths, about 299 smallholder farmers, and roughly 110 agriculture technology startups, innovation hubs, and technology organizations across 11 African countries. And it found that lack of funding is the biggest barrier for the low adoption of technology by African farmers. More than half of Africa's rural population is employed in the agriculture sector, with about 46% coming from Kenya. Overall, technology adoption on the continent is quite low. Ghana, Senegal, and Zambia have the lowest agri-tech adoption rate. All right, we're joined now by George Odhiambo, the country director here in Kenya of Haifa International. He joins us now via Skype from Nairobi. Thank you very much, Mr. Odhiambo, for joining us tonight. So going through your report, 23% of youth engaged in agriculture use any form of agricultural technology, yet we know that agriculture is one of Africa's largest and most vital sectors. So why is investment in agri-tech so low?
I think there is generally a lack of awareness of the potential for use of technology within the agricultural sector, which we need to change. There is great opportunity for transforming Africa's agriculture by the use of technology and also attracting youth into the agricultural sector itself. So uncovering those kind of technologies and innovations that will support agriculture and popularizing them is a very important need that our study also uncovered.
Okay, so the report also talks about a lack of financing and training. So let's first talk about training, because some have advanced the argument that farmers in Africa, number one, have poor digital literacy and unwavering respect for traditional ways of working. Those still persist, according to some of those arguments. How much of this is a challenge?
It's both a challenge and also an opportunity. For instance, the way we do extension is gradually changing to incorporate the use of digital modes of extension. That's even becoming more pressing and also imperative, looking at, for instance, the impact that COVID-19 has had on the agricultural sector. Our study also uncovered that almost 40% of agribusiness were affected by COVID-19. Adopting technology for extension and training will really change that and have a greater impact and a greater outreach to more farmers, but also attract younger people into farming.
Okay, so what about access to financial capital? What are some of the funding models that could work in the continent?
Yeah, there are different ways that funding can be accessed. We could look at the great opportunities for impact investment, for instance. There is a great interest right now in agriculture to solve the challenge for food security within Africa. There are also different modes that financial institutions are also engaging in. Risk guarantee mechanisms can also increase access to finance, but also looking at collateralized loans and financing and leasing methodologies.
So as we talk about enhancing the use of technology in Africa's agriculture, how can it be done in an affordable and accessible way, especially to those smallholder farmers in the continent?
We need to innovate, especially for the smallholder farmers. There are lots of technological innovations out there that need to be uncovered and supported to grow. IFA, for instance, is looking at running competition across Africa to identify these kind of technologies and also attracting young innovators and financing young innovators to innovate, especially for African agriculture. That might uncover greater innovations that can be adopted by a wider number of people, and it's essentially drive the agricultural sector.
All right, Mr. George Othiambo, we appreciate your time tonight. Thank you very much for joining us. You're watching Global Business. Still ahead on the show. Tourists begin to return to Germany after more than a year and a half of pandemic disruptions. And young entrepreneurs viewed as key to solving South Africa's unemployment crisis.
Business in Africa is at a crossroads. We celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges, from grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant. Only on CGTN.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
I try to not let it affect me, but there are days when it does. I'm a human being, and to see patients in a hospital bed and their family members are not there, there's no one there to hold their hand, that human touch, you know?
I just hope everyone can remember that the situation is not permanent and that everything will get better eventually.
In other headlines at this hour, vote counting continues in Zambia after presidential and parliamentary elections. The Electoral Commission of Zambia says it has started receiving results from all 156 constituencies. The full results are not expected until Sunday. Incumbent Edgar Lungu is seeking re-election. His main challenger is businessman Hakainde Hichilema. 4 African countries are now reporting entering the 4th wave of coronavirus infections. The highly contagious Delta variant is said to be dominant. According to the Africa Centers for Disease Control, the continent is experiencing a rise in infections for the 4th time since the pandemic began. The Ethiopian government has denounced a planned military alliance between rebel forces from Tigray and Oromia. The federal government says the two are working together in destabilizing the government. The alliance between the two rebel groups was breached after talks that lasted 6 weeks between the two groups. Both groups have been operating separately in Ethiopia. And finally, hundreds of fires are burning across the Mediterranean, displacing thousands and causing irreparable damage, with very high temperatures expected in parts of Spain and France on Friday and Saturday. The crisis threatens to spread, with weeks of scorching summer weather still to come across the region. And those are some of the day's headlines. The UK is facing a critical shortage of truck drivers, with some estimates indicating a shortage of 100,000 drivers. Some of the UK's biggest supermarket chains are offering pay increases and bonuses as suppliers warn that the situation is likely to continue. But as Nicole Johnston reports from London, the move may not be enough to stop some shop shelves from remaining empty.
Andre is a truck driver from Romania. He's only been on the road for a year, but says he can see why thousands of drivers are leaving the industry.
In my opinion, I'm young. I don't feel the hours that bad like some old guys feel them, you know?
The average age of a truck driver in the UK is 55, and many are retiring.
The industry has been hit by a perfect storm of events. First Brexit, and then the pandemic. And now new tax law changes has led even more people to leave. Add to that long hours on the road, and the industry estimates that up to 20% of drivers have left.
That's around 100,000 drivers short of what's needed.
This is a tidal wave that's been coming from the horizon for decades. And now all of a sudden people are moaning about getting wet feet. If it wasn't so serious, it'd be laughable, to be honest. These issues have been around for years.
One of the big problems is retaining experienced drivers.
A large reason for that, leading up till the recent crisis, has been that the driver pay rates were suppressed, mainly because the margins of the operators are suppressed by very, very, very powerful buyers, these being the large retail and grocery supply companies. And we know that they have to push the margins down because the end customer, you and me, we want our food at the cheapest price.
Now supermarkets, including Aldi, Tesco's and Morrison's, are offering bonuses and increased salaries to attract drivers.
Wage inflation is rife, and it really is a case of the highest bidder being able to attract labour.
In response to the crisis, the government has increased the hours drivers can work and is allowing nighttime deliveries. It's also put 2,000 army truck drivers on standby to help. Back at the truck stop, and Andre says he doesn't see a long-term future in driving.
That's just temporary for me. Basically, I want to do this just till I buy a nice car and a house, and that's it. Then I'm searching for something else.
If that's the case, the UK could find a shortage of drivers is here to stay. Nicole Johnston, CGTN, London.
Now, as we reported earlier, Kenya's Ministry of Environment and Forestry has announced the launch of a new campaign geared at tackling environmental challenges in the capital, Nairobi. The campaign seeks to promote sustainable consumption among members of the public to reduce waste generation. It also aims to promote recycling at homes. Nairobi has witnessed ballooning of electronic waste owing to the rise of mobile phone penetration and a burgeoning middle class. Globally, the UN estimates that electronic waste reached 42 million tons in 2014. Another data by the Global E-Waste Monitor report found that a record 54 million metric tons of electronic waste was generated globally in 2019, marking a 21% jump in just 5 years. All right, so we're now joined by Honorable Mohamed Elmi, the Chief Administrative Secretary, Ministry of Environment and Forestry in Kenya, to explore this further. Thank you very much, Honorable Elmi, for joining us tonight. So a national strategy document out in February pointed out that one of the key problems with waste management in Kenya is that collection levels are pretty low. How will this be resolved?
I think good evening. I think the bigger problem actually has been we've been using what we call linear system of waste disposal, where when you get to a waste is taken to a dump site, and what the document does is that wants to move Kenya to a more circular economy, which means first and foremost, we encourage people not to buy things they don't need, and therefore reduce consumption that is not required. But more importantly, separate the waste at home, make sure then they are taken to separation facility, and then they are recycled, and then they are resold back to the people. And therefore, we expect when it is fully functional, eventually only 5% to end up in the landfills. And therefore, the new waste management policy, and which we hope will become a law very soon, encourages that we move away from this linear approach, which I've used for many years, which has been problematic. One, in terms of the collection, as you said. Two, in terms of making sure that the landfills, once they are full, they generate gases that are also not good for the environment.
Waste management, we know, is a devolved function, but why are counties not handling waste management properly?
Actually, waste management has always been a devolved function, even when before devolution, the county councils used to deal with it. What the ministry and the National Environment Management Authority are doing is to provide the regulatory and the policy framework. And therefore, in February this year, Cabinet passed both the policy and the bill, which will go to Parliament. We are working then with the Nairobi County government and NMS to begin to implement that policy. And we hope that all other counties will be. So all counties across the country actually do collect waste, but it is inefficient. And as I said, it's a linear approach. For example, 60% of the waste of Nairobi is organic, from which we can have fertilizers made. The other part of it, plastics. Already there are now a number of companies that are recycling plastics. So quite substantial amount, and we estimate up to almost 90%, we should be able to either use, recycle, and continuously do that, and therefore create more jobs, make sure that we protect the environment.
Okay, so one of the goals of this 2021 waste management policy is to reduce methane emissions. How big a problem is this across Kenya's agricultural sector, and how will those emissions be reduced?
I think the methane reduction will happen once we stop dumping everything in a dump site, like we do in Nairobi, a place called Dandora. And that causes that. It's not a big problem out in the rural areas, but in the bigger cities where there's a big dump site, then that's a problem.
And where do waste-to-power systems fit into Kenya's efforts to better manage its waste?
Okay, we expect when this is all working well, maybe 5 to 10% of that will be used to waste to electricity. Ministry of Energy is currently working on a plan to set up the tariff for that. And they are working closely with us and also the Nairobi city. But large part of the waste, for example, the 3,000 per day tons of Nairobi, as I said, 60% is organic. There are already a number of farms that are turning that into fertilizer. And there are others who are recycling plastics, others are recycling wood and chairs and things like that. Electronic waste remains a big problem, but we have now about 6 recyclers, of which We Center is one of the biggest in the region. And as I said earlier, our linear approach, which was just to collect every waste and throw them together and then taking them to a dump site, has been our problem. Once this policy and law are in place, we expect every household to separate them, and different color-coded trucks will pick, and then the recyclers like We Center will now get the electronic waste because they have much higher capacity to recycle than they are able to get at the moment. We believe a lot of people have a lot of gadgets, their phones, their computers, their fridges, which they do not take to the right recycling center.
Have there been talks within the Energy Ministry and EPRA to set a tariff for power generated from thermal plants powered by waste?
I think at the moment, currently, they are working on a plan. I'm aware that they're working on a plan. I'm not sure whether they have finalized the actual tariff for waste to energy. I know they do have tariffs for solar, they do have tariffs for geothermal and others. And I expect soon they will have one for waste to energy.
Right. In the 12 months to February this year, Kenya registered an average of 27,000 vehicles each month. So what's the government policy on their eventual recycling as they fall out of use?
Okay, at the moment we have the regulations which are going to come, EPR, which is going to ensure that all those who produce products, they participate in ensuring that they are recycled. Among those will be vehicles, one of them. About 19 products are listed for that segment. When that happens, it means anybody who brings any products, whether it is electronic or a vehicle or others, will be expected to be part of a producer organization that will ensure that they participate in the Tech Back scheme. For example, at the moment, the plastic group have come together. They have formed an agency, and they are supporting those who are trying to recycle.
The 2021 Sustainable Waste Management Policy is silent on how it will handle emissions from fossil-fueled vehicles on Kenyan roads. How will this be handled over the medium term?
Actually, that policy you're talking about is largely about solid waste management. Under the MCA, which is under National Environment Management Authority, air pollution is already taken care of, and NEMA as the regulator is involved together with the National Transport to try to reduce those air pollution. So it is covered within the MCA law.
And finally, as we wrap up, fixing some of these issues like expanding coverage of waste collection, that will require a significant amount of capital. How will these services be funded at a time when Kenya's tax base is deeply constrained? Should Kenyan farms and citizens expect new taxes at national or county level?
No, I think the policy across the world generally is the polluter pays. So there will be two levels. The households already, if they separate, most of them pay for the people who collect them. Now it will be using the what you call the circular economy approach will actually generate more money, because most of the things that used to be dumped now will be given to recyclers that will produce. Also, the owners of the product, let's say the phone companies, the computer company, all this, they will be part of a Tech Back scheme that they will come up with, and we expect then they will also chip into the taking back. So the principle of the polluter pays really will apply.
Honorable Mohamed Elmi, we appreciate your time tonight. Thank you for joining us. After a year and a half of mostly empty streets, tourists are slowly returning to the German capital, Berlin. But are the local visitors enough to make up for its lack of international tourists? Let's take a look.
They are back. For months, Paris Platz in front of Berlin's iconic Brandenburg Gate was almost empty. But now, tourists are once again flocking to the square, taking in the historical site and, of course, taking some selfies. Germany is mostly open to tourists from other European Union countries, although unvaccinated visitors must take a COVID-19 test before arrival. Radis Pajatis and his wife drove all the way to Berlin from Lithuania, something they planned to do last year but had to postpone because of the pandemic.
We had 2 years at home. We can't go because it was Corona time, and now we can feel free. Yeah, now we are free.
At the DDR Museum, located next to the River Spree, tourists are lining up to enter.
We are at about 40% compared to 2019. That means that 60% is missing, mostly international visitors that aren't traveling to the city. It is developing slowly, but surely since we opened on the 24th of June.
The museum is one of Berlin's top Cold War historical attractions, normally drawing up to 1 million visitors a year. But the museum was forced to close for 7 months due to restrictions imposed to stop the spread of COVID. During open months, there were often other curbs on how many visitors were allowed into the museum at a time. It's now operating at full capacity, although some rules remain, such as visitors wearing face masks. Tourists say they're not worried.
Yes, I do feel safe. We are in the open air here, for example, so masks are not mandatory. And once we are inside the buildings, we keep distancing, we use masks, so there's no reason to be afraid.
Unlike many other European capitals, Berlin lacks large industries. Tourism is an important and growing industry. The city often ranks third on lists of most visited European cities after London and Paris.
The structure in Berlin is very clearly focused on tourism and provides for 250,000 workplaces. That is, of course, an economical factor in Berlin. We don't have much industry here, and many service providers are also tied to the tourism sector.
COVID-19 infections are increasing again in Germany, but the spread is still lower than in other European countries, such as France, the UK, and Spain. Li Qiong, CGTN.
We shift focus now to our series, Tibet 70 Years On. CGTN takes a behind-the-scenes look at the region's first ever bullet train line, which opened the middle of this year. Here's Nicole Ng with that story.
It's been called the roof of the world. Until the past century, it was difficult to even build roads on the Tibetan plateau. But late June marked the arrival of high-speed rail, the first bullet train line in the region, opening between Lhasa and Ningchi. The train manager says it opened to a lot of fanfare.
We received a lot of tourists, and the local Tibetans have been quite enthusiastic too, so it makes the work enjoyable.
Mountains, altitudes, and nearly 50 tunnels among the reasons it took 6 years to lay down some 400 kilometers of track. What's more, over 90% of it is over 3,000 meters above sea level. We asked the driver on his break what else makes these trains special.
The difference compared with earlier trains is these ones can be powered by electricity or diesel, so if there are any problems with the connection, any breakdowns or loss of power, we can switch to using internal combustion.
The option allowing drivers to navigate weather and other challenges associated with the Tibetan terrain, all while moving at high speeds.
This train can travel at up to 160 kilometers an hour. Now, while that mightn't be the fastest train in China, it's cut the travel time between the cities of Ningchi and Lhasa by about a third. And we asked passengers what this new line means to them.
I'm very happy, very excited. It's remarkable.
We wanted to see the scenery along the way, and the carriage is oxygenated, so it's more comfortable.
Have you gotten altitude sick?
No, we've been okay, but we've been using oxygen the entire time.
He's already used 8 or 9 cans. What day is it today? The 4th day, I think.
I'm a little excited, a little curious. I wanted to see it for myself. I stayed in Ningchi for the night just to take this train.
The Ningchi-Lhasa line is part of a bigger project, the Sichuan-Tibet Railway, dubbed the most challenging in the world. While that won't be completed for years still, tourists and locals alike can enjoy this section until it does. Nicole Ng, CGTN.
Going through the commodities market, the Brent benchmark oil price fell for a second day today, albeit holding above $70 a barrel, after the International Energy Agency warned demand growth for crude is slowing sharply owing to the spread of coronavirus variants. Brent crude was down 15 cents or 0.2% at $71.16 a barrel by 9:31 GMT. Growth in demand for crude ground to a halt in July and is set to rise at a slower pace over the rest of this year because of surging infections from the Delta variant of the coronavirus. Meanwhile, gold prices edged higher, underpinned by concerns over the rapid spread of the Delta coronavirus variant, though a resilient dollar capped gains and kept bullion on track for its second straight weekly decline. Still ahead on Global Business. We'll take a look at a startup in South Africa that is helping to address the country's job crisis.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. And no one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
South Africa's jobless rate jumped to a record 32.6% in the first quarter of this year on the back of a prolonged COVID-19 lockdown. It's likely to jump further after the worst protests in years, sparked by former President Jacob Zuma's arrest, left many businesses looted, destroyed and burnt to the ground. But there is hope. According to a new World Bank report, young entrepreneurs and startups could be key to solving the problem. CGTN's Julie Shire takes a look at a self-startup in Alexandra Township on Grassroots tonight.
Bonani Shikweni lives in Johannesburg's impoverished Alexandra Township. She was determined not to be discouraged by unemployment and started a small home sewing business with her husband's help in 2014.
It pushed me so hard when I look at the youth of Alexandra, no jobs and women suffering. So that's why I created this. Then I called some ladies to start the business, and now it's operating.
Shikweni pushed on with the help of Netcare Hospital Group. Business hit a brief hurdle during the COVID-19 lockdown, but she bounced back up quickly.
We started to make more cloth masks last year. We worked very hard. The first order that we received after the president announced is 10,000 masks for Netcare. Then when we busy started on 10,000 masks for Netcare, then yes, employment services and called me again. They say no. Example, Alex Mall, they want 20,000 masks for Alex shoppers. So we're busy last year.
Hluvuku has since signed a contract to produce hospital supplies. It's moved to bigger premises under the wing of the Presidential Youth Employment Services Initiative. The small business employs 30 young people and trains dozens of others.
If you are young like us, you're going to commit yourself into crime and do wrong things and smoke drugs. So here is better because of you make yourself proud because of you are working and you gain more experience. It started by training me on the machine. I was sewing before, but I pushed myself to learn how to cut the design and drawings.
Recent civil unrest and looting has worsened the crisis. 150,000 more jobs are at risk after thousands of stores and warehouses were destroyed in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal.
So it was a very stressful phase, and it still is right now. Having a job at this time is a great privilege, and having a job that links with whatever that I want to do. My career path is fashion design, so me working here is a great benefit because at some point I'm going to be a shop owner.
The World Bank says not all is lost despite many challenges. Dozens of startups like Vuku can help arrest joblessness if the right ecosystem is created for entrepreneurs to thrive. Julie Shara, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
Egypt is experiencing a surge in electronic commerce and online trade, and authorities are excited about it. The central bank has allocated about $100 million to fintech startups to support growth of this sector. Specifically, authorities are looking at startups offering non-banking payment solutions required to support e-commerce. CGTN's Yasser Hakim takes up the story of one company that's been successfully providing such services.
Tagir, or trader in Arabic, is a fast-growing e-commerce startup that has seen an impressive average growth of 40% per month since established in 2019. The social e-commerce platform is enabling online merchants with end-to-end logistics in the market.
We have like hundreds of thousands of online small sellers, but all of them go to the service providers on their own, which makes it like super expensive. So what we do is we build a one-stop shop online platform where we can aggregate all of these thousands of merchants and then go and deal with the suppliers as one unit. And this way you will get much more lower prices, which will come with the benefit of the entire network. We found that those are an informal economy. The e-commerce social sellers online, they're so deprived, they don't have anyone supporting them.
One of the biggest challenges for small online merchants is lack of access to banking services, payments, and credit lines.
Definitely payment is not the easiest things. I mean, the number of wallets there is limited. It's not a wide range of wallets. Like services are not stable all the time. That's because of the massive pressure there is on only 3 or 4 wallets. Most of our merchants, they are maybe students, they may be like housewives, they may be like online sellers. They're not necessarily have this steady flow of income would justify they open a bank account. So basically, payment is picking up in Egypt, but definitely we have a long way to go there.
There's a growing number of fintechs in the market that aim at filling this gap. Tagir claims to use AI and data science to enable first-time sellers to start and scale their online business with relatively low risk.
The existence of Tagir made these guys not need financing at all, because Tagir goes and deals with suppliers on their behalf. We are partnering up with number of fintech partners so that they can provide services to our merchants, like they can provide early profit payments to them, they can provide them with loans, they can provide them with all of. So Tagir's vision is all about partnering with other fintech partners to provide these services to the merchants. The rise of fintech generally will help include lots of these merchants into the fintech ecosystem.
Tagir has recently closed $6.4 million in its latest seed round. The startup plans to expand and provide similar financial and technical solutions to e-commerce in the Middle East and North African region. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
And a look at the Forex. South Africa's rand fell against a strong dollar early on Friday as investors looked for more hints from the U.S. Federal Reserve on its plans to reduce monetary stimulus. At 6:37 GMT, the rand traded at 14.81 against the dollar, 0.21% weaker than its previous close. Meanwhile, in Nigeria, the local unit of Unilever said it was forced to purchase dollars at 9% above the market exchange rate due to the Central Bank of Nigeria's rationing of foreign currencies. CEOs of some banks in the country have warned customers against using fraudulent methods to get access to foreign exchange. Their warning came amid complaints by some customers who lamented that they continue to experience difficulty in accessing forex from banks, forcing them to resort to bureau de change. And with that, we come to the end of Global Business tonight. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on the screen and follow us on our digital media platforms. I am Peninah Karibe. Thank you for your company.